Well, I think it is time in 1 minute, we're going to be moving into our next session. So just as a little general overview, we have two sessions in here, a little bit shorter sessions back to back, and then we're going to break into another breakout session where you'll have the opportunity to go either into the Kalapuya room or stay in this room. And then at the end of the day, we will be also gathering back in here to close the day out. And I did want to make sure that we're keeping our raffle tickets up here. If you already put one in, that's great. Some of you earned an extra one for your extra work this morning, and thank you for doing that. But if you did not yet put your name on a ticket, please come up to this front table here and put your name in the hat for the drawing that we have at the end of the day. Is Serena in the house? Oh, hi. Hi. I looked right by you. Can you come up to the stage? Is Clarita going first? Okay. Great. Is Clarita on? Awesome. Okay. Well, Clarita, while we're pulling her up, I unfortunately did not receive the bio in time. And so I would like for you to please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you, where you come from, and what brings you here today.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Everyone, my name is Clarita Love Tanbigay. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation. My family is from the Tonalea area on my mom's side, and on my dad's side, we're from Pine Springs, Arizona. I currently live up here in Seattle, Washington. That's where I'm zooming into you to give this presentation about our new center. I am a citizen of the Navajo Nation, as I stated. I'm also an assistant professor at the University of Washington, where I focus on thinking about issues of data sovereignty, tribal data sovereignty. I also think about climate change and water security. And then today, what I'm doing is I'm coming to you to talk a little bit about one of the new centers that I'm helping to develop at the University of Washington, and I'm doing that in collaboration with my colleague, Serena, who was just in the room there. So that's my introduction. Do you want me to go ahead and launch into my presentation as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. Give me 1 second to just reorganize my screen here. So someone over there will be probably switching the slides. So the title of my presentation is Having the Right Conditions for Action. And we are located at the University of Washington, and we're called the Center for Environmental Health Equity. We're a Region 10 Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. Can we go to the second slide, please? So to start, I want to make sure that we introduce the full team that we have under the Center for Environmental Health Equity. We are led by Ed Mancito, who is an environmental and occupational health scientist at the University of Washington. And then that second photo is of myself. Like I said, I'm the assistant professor in the information school. But for the center, I help to direct the center itself, but also I'm the director for tribal nations, center, and organizations. So we focus on working with not just tribal nations, but the communities and organizations throughout Region 10. And then we also have Esther Min. Esther Min is the director of thinking about the types of engagement with grassroots communities. So she's working with communities that are BIPOC communities well, my focus is really with tribal nations and indigenous communities in Region 10. And then I won't introduce everyone here, but I wanted to go ahead and put our photos up here so you have a sense for who we are. Can we go to that next slide, please? So not to go through all of these, but I do want to just give a shout out to all of our collaborating centers. We work with folks who are experts in energy justice, clean energy. We have a wide network of people who think about occupational environmental health. We have folks that think about exposure sciences and pediatric health issues, as well as collaborators here on campus who are really specific to thinking about American and Indigenous studies. And they help us to ensure that our work with tribal nations continues to be grounded in a solid understanding in tribal governance. So let's go to that next slide. So this slide tells you a little bit about the TIC-TAC Center itself and what we're really about. So I'll start by providing a bird's eye view or a big picture perspective about what we're tasked to do under the Environmental Protection Agency. The mission that we have for the center, that is the University of Washington Center for Environmental Health Equity in Region 10, is to empower tribal nations, communities, and organizations to enhance their capacity in securing and managing environmental and energy justice grants and programs successfully. And then our center, our university center, is one of 16 centers under the Environmental Protection Agency's Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center program. And then Serena will also be talking about her center here, who's one of our partnering centers up here in Region 10. Next slide, please. So our aims for the center are really to think a little bit with communities that we're working with about the types of environmental justice issues that they have. And then we're able to bring some of our expertise in thinking about the analyses and needs assessments. We also are helping to think about how tribal nations, communities, and organizations can begin to prepare, apply, and manage their grants and programs. And then one thing that has become really important to the work that we bring is considering how we think about meaningful engagement with all environmental and energy justice stakeholders and decision makers. And I'll give you some concrete examples here. So this is just sort of like more of a broad overview. We also think about that capacity building and what that capacity building means for different segments or different levels of our communities. And then we think about what it means to foster communication and leadership. As you can imagine, with us being at the university, one of the things that we're tasked with every day is training and teaching students. And from the tribal perspective, we're really interested in thinking about how to train and teach students to take the knowledge that they're harnessing here at the University of Washington back into their community so that they can have the biggest impact that they can for their own tribal nations and, of course, the wider tribal network. So we do that by engaging a number of university graduate students in thinking through some of the technical assistance opportunities that can be leveraged by them. Let's go to the next slide, please. So that I gave you a bird's eye view, but we do get a lot of questions about what counts as technical assistance. So I wanted to bring this slide up. And technical assistance, kind of in a nutshell, involves offering support to individuals or organizations to enhance their capacity, knowledge, and skills in a specific domain. The domain that our center focuses on is environmental and energy justice. The support that we could offer, and we do offer, is guidance, training, resources, and specialized expertise that can be tailored to address the unique challenges that we receive from target populations. Let's move on to the next slide. As some examples of how we can build more technical assistance partnerships and services, I list these points here. Some of the things that we've been able to think about is providing assistance to tribal nations when thinking about the life cycle of data within their communities. For example, the types of methodologies or methods that they're utilizing in order to collect environmental justice or environmental health data, and even thinking about what that data sovereignty means for the tribal community, because they're often collaborating with outside entities to get that work done. We also have an extensive amount of expertise in thinking about institutional review boards for those communities who are working with human subjects or humans, thinking about how to gain informed consent and also to protect the knowledge and the data of the communities that you're working with has been something of large importance for a number of tribal communities. So we help tribes to think through that process. We've also supported tribal nations in thinking about how to develop or how to outline their quality assurance protection plans. We haven't had a lot of requests with this in the lower 48, but up in Alaska, we've had a few tribes ask us to support them through that process. We also think a little bit about the types of best practices that tribal nations and leaders can think about when thinking about community-led data collection. Sometimes that's called citizen science. And the last point here is thinking about how to develop visual environmental data sets. A lot of times we're developing data sets for communicating the data that we've collected to folks in policy, like at Washington, D.C. Sometimes we're developing these data visualization slides for our colleagues or other folks that are in technical spaces. But sometimes we're also developing these for community members like our youth and our elders. So thinking through how to parse that out and how to improve your communication techniques is something that we aim to do. Next slide, please. We also think about a capacity building, as I stated. We don't fully understand what we mean or what is largely meant by capacity building. We know that's an important term, and we know that it's a huge conversation in Indian country. So what capacity building really means, I think, needs a little bit more refinement on our part. However, I put some examples here to get us started in this conversation. Some of the things that we think about in terms of capacity building is helping community members and leaders think about how to prioritize their issues or their challenges so that they can focus on those priorities in grants and other projects. We have been really thinking about the importance of building a network, not just with the TIC-TAC centers, but beyond and within Indian country, most certainly. And then, of course, navigating the grant application process can be really tricky, especially for some of you who are really new to that conversation. There's so many different online portals and platforms that I'm not even familiar with, but you know, we're learning and trying to ensure that you all have access to that information. And the next point is really thinking about what it means to develop strong grant proposals, not just for the grant proposal that's in front of you, but in terms of thinking about a long-term plan, like how one first small grant might build toward a larger grant and how that larger grant will be developed over the course of several years. So thinking about what it means to develop a strong grant proposal. And the last thing, of course, when you have funds, you need to think through how to manage that grant funding. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I know I'm limited to 18 minutes so that Serena and I both have a chance to present what we need. This slide is really about how we're thinking about engaging tribal nations in our partnership. Some of the things that we're thinking about is really understanding and developing a strong, thorough understanding for the structure of tribal communities, knowing that they have sovereign status under the U.S. federal government. So what that means is really important in terms of consultation and decision-making and engagement. And then also understanding that tribal organizations, understanding where they play into the conversation, and of course, communities. So really thinking about what that organizational structure means, and then also applying it to our thinking about tribal sovereignty and self-determination. The next point is really thinking about how do we build those gaps across these different entities, federal agencies, tribes, states, etc. And then one last thing that we do provide is through our center, we have a limited amount of subaward funds, that we can allocate to some of the partners that are working with us directly through the center. Can we go to the next slide, please? In context of building a network that focuses on technical assistance, the analogy that I'm drawing on is this sort of image of a spider web. So each strand of the spider web represents a different area of expertise or type of support that a technical assistance center can provide. The intersections where the strands connect symbolize those collaborations and the sharing of knowledge that can happen among individuals or organizations who are offering technical assistance. So just like a spider web is the interconnected and it's strong, a network to build technical assistance really relies and depends on the diverse skills and the resources of its members to provide that comprehensive support to those that are coming to us for some support. So we're really interested in understanding what that network looks like so that we know how to best serve tribal communities by leveraging the expertise of key organizations and individuals. Can we go to the next slide, please? Some of the things that we've been able to do through our center so far, we've only been operating for 1 year. So this first year has been really about launching the center and really figuring out the landscape in this space. But right off when we got funded, we did work with the Akiak Native community up in Alaska, as well as the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission here in the Pacific Northwest, to think about how to prioritize some of their needs in regard to salmon restoration and fisheries management. So it was in June and September of last year where we held salmon roundtables to think about what those priorities were. And since then, we've been able to develop those priorities along with these key entities to think about how they can begin to tackle some of the environmental justice issues that they're experiencing around salmon, water quality, and climate change. The next slide, please. Some other examples of things that we've been able to do is think about some of the one-to-one technical assistance in Region 10. I don't add all of them to this list, but I wanted to give you an idea for the types of conversations that we've been having in our center with tribal nations, organizations, and communities. And they include conversations around the impacts of climate change, whether it be as a result of sea level rise and relocation. We've also been asked to think very carefully about air and water quality programs, all the way from questions of how do you develop a QAP so that you can develop these programs under the Environmental Protection Agency, all the way to really thinking about what sort of technical processes or methods can be utilized in collecting water quality or even air quality samples. And then, of course, in thinking about data analyses in that process. We've also really spent some time thinking about how do we consider workforce development under environmental justice and environmental health. This, of course, is going to take a considerable amount of careful thought and collaborations with tribal natural resource departments, but also other organizations who are currently supporting the efforts to build workforces in our communities. And then, we've been asked to think about environmental remediation. So, tribes are really focused on thinking about how we might remediate and restore some of the contaminated soils, waters, and airs around our areas. And then I already mentioned that we support tribes in thinking about not only developing their own tribal IRBs, but we're to submit an IRB application all the way to whether an IRB application has all the elements it needs in order to get approval. And then the last piece is just thinking about how we can provide assistance to some of the tribes who are looking for grant funding and connecting with them with those funds, and also providing them with some ideas about how to plan for applying for those funds. So the next slide, please. We'll just race through this next slide. I just want to talk about some of the upcoming things that we have going on. Can we go to the next slide? So one thing that we're planning right now are some training modules and mechanisms. On this slide off to the left, off to the right, you can see that we have a couple of slides that I did a screenshot of. We are developing modules that focus on tribal research review boards and the protection of Indigenous knowledge systems. The learning objectives for each of the modules are laid out. For example, in this example, we have learning objectives that focus on understanding the function of tribal research review boards, understanding how these boards can benefit the tribal nations and the community, and then understanding how to create their own tribal research review board processes. And in addition to institutional review boards, we also have supported communities, or we're in the process of developing training modules to think about land management collaborations, mental health in tribal nations who are facing things like sea level rise and relocation. We even are thinking about how we might rethink tribal displacement. We largely call it relocation, but as some of you already know, there's some policies in Indian country that are that center this notion of relocation from the 40s, 50s, and 60s onward, so that terminology can be kind of confusing for some folks that think about the relocation policy and the Dawes Act of the 20th century. We also are developing some training modules on thinking about sustainable building practices for tribal communities who are considering reconstruction. And then lastly, something a little bit more creative is thinking about climate imaginaries, and that's like working with youth and elders to think about a vision for climate action and community planning for the future. Next slide, please. So one thing that I would love to hear from you all about, I know I'm Zooming in today, so I'm not physically there to talk with you or to meet with you, but I'll give you my contact information, and I urge you to reach out to us. I'm really interested in understanding what your technical assistance needs under environmental justice and energy justice. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I have this slide. It's kind of an exercise for you, and maybe if you can send me an email if anything pops into your mind. But I'm wondering if you're a tribe who's dealing with some of these environmental and energy justice challenges. What are the types of technical assistance you view as a substantial need or a really high need in your community? And then if you and I are in a situation where we can talk through that, it'll help me to plan not just for this year, but for the future in regard to thinking about what kind of information and what kind of tasks we can start developing within our center so that we can collaboratively help to address some of these major needs. Next slide, please. So this is my email address. It's just my first name. It's clarita@uw.edu. So please reach out if you have, if you can help me to understand the technical assistance needs that you have. And then the next thing I want to do, next slide, please. I put this at the very end, but I wanted to say that we are building our tribal advisory board under our center. We currently have Heather Kendall Miller, who's a lawyer, and she's worked with the Native American Rights Funds for several years. And then we also have Lauren James, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Washington. And then she's also worked with within the fish and wildlife community for a few decades now. And then lastly, we have Nancy Maryboy, who's a member of the Cherokee Navajo Nation. And she really thinks solidly about Indigenous science, such as traditional ecological knowledge, and how to impart education, not only within our tribal communities, but within other networks. If you're interested in joining or helping to participate in the Tribal Advisory Board, please reach out to me. I would really appreciate getting to know you and then understanding how you feel you might want to participate. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. Here's the contact information that we have for our specific center at the University of Washington. You can find us at the URL above, but I also have a QR code here for you. If you have your phones, you can get your phones out and scan this, and then you'll be able to look at our website. And then again, my contact is my first name, which is Clarita at uw.edu. And then I have my cell phone number here if you want to shoot me a text message or give me a call. I do screen my calls, but leave a message or give me a text, and we can be in conversation in that way. And of course, I want to give one last shout out to the team that we have at the University of Washington who's working under our center. I really appreciate the time and the invitation to be here with you today. And I'm also honored to be presenting with my colleague Serena, who's going to be going next. Ahiha, everybody.
Wapila Clarita, thanks so much. That was lovely. And how mitakayapi ampetu washte to you all. Greetings, friends. It's a good day to be here with you. My name is Serena Fasthorse. I am Sichangu Lakota and Amskapi Pakani, or Blackfeet, and I work at the Portland State University Institute for Tribal Government as one of the co-directors for the Northwest Environmental Justice Center. And we are a Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, just like the one that Clarita was talking about. I do have some slides that are probably getting pulled up right now. And I'm here to talk with you today about having, or how we can hopefully help you with having the right conditions for action. So first, I just wanted to start out with introducing myself and our team. I have a slide with a picture of all of us. We have 3 co-directors and 1 tribal lead. So we have Tyler Wagner, who is working on clean energy projects and finding funding for folks and helping with planning for clean energy projects. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is us. Tyler is on the end. He is on the left, and he brings a lot of experience from social justice education and nonprofit leadership, and he has experience in the energy space as well. So like I said, he's leading our energy work. And then we have our 3 co-directors. Linny Brown is right next to him. She comes from a background of community organizing around environmental issues and really has a lot of good community values that are leading her work. And then we have LaDawn Garamani next to Linny, who is actually here at the summit. So if you see her, please say hi. She is so awesome. She has a PhD in community health and the sustainable use of natural resources. And so she has a lot of wealth of knowledge and also just such a lovely approach to her work and really good caring energy. And then there's me. I graduated from Portland State University with majors in community development and Indigenous Nation Studies. And I've been working at the Institute for Tribal Government for around 4 years now. And I've been helping to deliver tribal relations programming. We have a certificate in tribal relations program, so I've been doing that program for a few years now, and also providing trainings and assistance to tribes and organizations who want to learn how to work with tribes. So I've been doing that work for a while. And then I'm also in indigenous community land restoration, like reclamation work in the Portland area. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and I am the owner of Kimimala Consulting. Kimimala is the Lakota word for butterfly, and I chose that for the beauty and transition that the butterfly represents. And it's because what I work on in that consulting business is cultivating transformative relationships for Indigenous community and agencies, and learning how to uplift Indigenous voice and vision, especially in land-based projects. So we've been involved in a few different restoration projects and systemic change, because that's a big part of this work is changing the systems that are not made for us, and getting our voices and our decision making a part of the way that governments work. So next slide, please. Clarita already talked a little bit about this, so I won't go too much into it, but we're part of the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center program. It's an EPA program. The acronym is TIC-TAC, so you might hear that around. It's, yeah, like TIC-TAC, like the candy. It's so cute. I love it. And it's just an easy way to refer to our program and what we're doing. So you might hear that sometimes, TIC-TAC or the TIC-TACs. So yeah, there's 16 across the nation, and we're lucky to have 2 in EPA Region 10. Not everybody has 2. So you got to hear from Clarita. They're doing some really good work up there in Seattle at the University of Washington. And it's a part of the Federal Justice 40 initiative. So it's part of trying to get at least 40% of federal funding to underserved communities. And so that's part of our directive. Next slide. So I just quickly wanted to shout out our, partner TIC-TACs. You got to hear from Clarita with the Center for Environmental Health Equity. But I also wanted to mention that the National Indian Health Board is one of the TIC-TAC recipients. So they are a national TIC-TAC that are serving all the tribal nations across the nation. And they have some pretty good resources too. Next slide. Alrighty, and I just wanted to take a moment to define environmental justice, because I know that environmental justice is often used in like governmental and academic spaces and doesn't always resonate in community. It's not always how we're talking about our work or the language that we use. So I just wanted to take a moment to get us all on the same page about what that even means, and that's helpful for me too. So I think there's a couple of ways that I think about environmental justice. One of them is that it's, of course, a social movement. So, there's been a lot of activism and protests against environmental racism and discriminatory policies and sightings of like landfills, or, in Indian country, we face extraction projects a lot. So the uprisings and speaking out and rising up against those discriminatory and environmental degradation projects and policies. So it is, of course, a social movement. But then the EPA defines environmental justice in a very specific way when they're talking about their work. And I have a note of it because I didn't memorize it. EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So very bureaucratic and very focused on policy, of course. But I think it's just important to understand what they're talking about when they say environmental justice too. But for me, as an Indigenous person, I feel like environmental justice has particular layers and nuances when we're looking at it from an Indigenous or tribal lens. And I think that it needs to be expanded whenever we're talking about Indigenous and tribal communities. When I think of environmental justice, I think of our inextricable relationship to the land. I think of our need to protect our natural resources. I think of investing in our food sovereignty. I think of protecting our first foods and medicines. I think of cultural revitalization, language preservation, and land back. As an Indigenous woman, when I think of the words environment and justice together, I think of how us Indigenous peoples were forcibly stripped from our environments, and that is the original injustice of the United States, and the foundational beginnings of the United States, and how that injustice is still felt today in our physical and spiritual and mental healths. And so I think that Indigenous and tribal environmental justice needs to include repairing and strengthening our sovereignty, and that the federal government needs to respect our sovereignty and uphold their trust and treaty obligations. And so I think that there's like specific actions that can be taken for environmental justice with Indigenous and tribal communities. And I am hopeful that these TICTAC programs are a step in the right direction. So getting back to the TICTAC programs, my next slide talks about our center. So we're a little bit different than the University of Washington Center. We're a co-led TICTAC. So Willamette Partnership is the grant holder. That's where LaDawn and Linny and Tyler are all based. But then I'm over at the Institute for Tribal Government at Portland State University, and we have a whole team at the Institute that's focused specifically on providing support to tribes and Indigenous communities. We have a team of 3 leadership level. We have our executive director, Darrell Kalika. Then there's me, and then we have a programs administrator, Krista Wilkie, and then we have 5 student positions, 3 undergrad and 2 graduate. So all of us are focused on this TICTAC work. And then there's also our connections to the university too. So we have the ability to tap into the faculty and staff and professors, subject matter expertise folks at Portland State University. And then this little graphic shows too that we are starting up a community leadership assembly. So there will be representation from each of the 4 states in EPA Region 10 who will help inform our work too. Next slide. And then we have a lot of partners. It's not just us. We are also leaning on our partners to help us provide technical assistance. So we have community organizers and technical assistance providers in each of the 4 states. RCAC, Rural Community Assistance Corporation, they are based in Alaska, and we have some Alaska Native partners up there who are doing a lot of good work. Alai Community Consulting is Oregon-based. Verde is Oregon-based. Oregon Public Health Institute, they're doing Washington community organizing, which is a little bit confusing, but they are. Boise State University, they're also doing community organizing in Idaho, and they have some emergency preparedness support that they can provide. Kearns and West are policy folks. Community Engineering Corps, they are engineers. And then Environmental Protection Network, they have a bunch of subject matter expertise folks, scientists, and EPA retired folks. Next slide. And then finally getting into our services, what we actually do. This graphic is showing each of our 4 service areas, and then also the top is showing that all of our programming is informed by our community organizing and engagement work. So we aim to deeply listen to what folks are telling us, what communities are telling us their issues and their goals are. And then from there, we, course correct and base our programs and service areas based on that. So we'll adapt based on what we hear. Next slide. I have a slide for each of our service areas, so don't worry. First, we want to be a resource hub. We want to make sure that we have really easy to access information. We have a website where we have lists of funding opportunities and also resources like mapping tools or equity tools. We have resources for both communities and technical assistance providers, and we try to make that as easy to use as possible. We also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for. We use that to make announcements of our funding opportunity, of new funding opportunities, of news updates, of events that might be happening, and we also have social media channels that we use to make those updates as well. And then we do tailored research for particular interests. So if we can save you some time and do some research for you, we have that service as well. So next slide. We also have cohort learning. So this is another one of our service areas. It's free leadership development opportunities, which are cohort style learnings. The 4 topics that we have are finding money and how to use it. So demystifying federal funding opportunities and making it easier to access, or like folks having the know-how to do that, and also like on the other side of getting a grant too, how to administer that money and do the accounting and all of that. Policy navigation is bringing a policy change idea from idea to fruition all the way through the step-by-step process for anybody anywhere in any state and for any kind of jurisdiction. Environmental leadership, of course, and data sovereignty. And the first 3 of those, registration just opened earlier this week. So please visit our website or connect with one of us. I just saw LaDon in here too, if you want to know more about that. Next slide. And then advocacy and storytelling is another piece of our programming, and one that's really important to me because, like I said before, systemic change is so inherent and core to this work. And so we really want to make sure that we're uplifting what we're hearing from communities, what challenges and barriers that people are facing, so that we can use our elevated platform to share that with our federal partners and let them know some recommendations for what changes they can make to make things easier for folks to access and for true justice to happen. Of course, we want to uplift stories of success too. So we know that there's lots of good things happening in the region, and we want to make sure that people know what's happening. And when stories are told, they can inspire people, and they can also provide models for others. And then we can also do documentation for folks too, like for reporting or anything else, or however folks want to tell their own stories. Okay, and then next slide. Finally, we're getting to our biggest service area, which is technical assistance. Next slide, please. So we are able to provide community-driven services, whatever you might need. We're trying to be really, really responsive. We have 3 different types of, or 3 different sizes of TA, I guess. Everyone who comes through our door or through our online form or email or phone, however you get a hold of us, we're always gonna spend at least 3 hours with you, like on the phone or on a Zoom call or coming out to your community to talk about your goals, and then get a plan of action for connecting you or getting you on your way. But we also can spend more time too. So that's the 40 and 160. And those aren't hard numbers. And I'm almost done. Sorry, I got my little time check. Um, next slide. I just wanted to give some examples of the types of technical assistance we can provide. So funding discovery, we can help match folks with funds that might be helpful for their project. We can also help with grant readiness. So we can do planning for a project. We can help with feasibility studies. We can review grants and provide advice. We can also be a regional network connector and navigator. I think that's really key to this role. I've heard a lot today about all the different resources that are available. I hear technical assistance a lot and all kinds of funding resources. So we want to make it easier for you to navigate all of the things that are available and save you time and be the ones to do that connecting and research on the front end. We can also do strategic planning. We've done this with a couple of tribes already. We've helped establish a tribal climate task force. We're helping with a climate action plan. And things like that. Customized capacity building. We've done some leadership development trainings for folks already, facilitation services, engineering support, research, and what else? Like we really want to know what you need and try to support you in whatever way we can. And then finally, just wanted to say on my next slide that there is a really easy way to request technical assistance with us. It's our online form, nwejc.org, and then we have a request technical assistance form. It shouldn't take longer than 15 minutes. We just need your contact information, your organizational information, what communities you're serving, and what specific project or area of interest you're interested in. And then we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And these are, we respond to these on a first come, first serve basis. So we have meetings every week where we review and then respond to these requests. So we really look forward to hearing from you. Please reach out. Me and LaDon will be here today and tomorrow. And on the next slide, there's my contact information if you want to reach out directly. I saw it up there for a second. Okay, there we go. So I have our shared email, or you can reach out to me directly at serena2@pdx.edu. And that's all I have. Wopila, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, both of those presenters. And I did want to just mention too that this whole idea of the TCTAC or TIC-TEC is brand new. So if you have never heard of it, that's why they just pretty much launched their services and received their funding very recently within the year. So please reach out to them. This is a new thing and they're really eager to hear from you. So thanks again, you both of the presenters. That was wonderful.